And I always start, the easiest question is just, how you want to be credited, say and then spell your name.
Okay, so I guess Corinne Blouin is my full name, but people call me Co in the community. So full name is CORINNE Co is just CO. It's just weird introducing myself as Co because they're like, people think that there's like more vowels coming, you know, they're like, what? But people do call me Co, so like if you hear like of me being referred as Co, that's it. My artist name kind of became Co Blue, like that's my Instagram name. It's literally Corinne Blouin, like shorter version, right? And yeah, that became my artist name, but like kind of like by accident.
And is that the co came from that, or did co come from
Well,
something
Co,
else
just
before?
people called me, like my parents call me that. It's just like a shorter version of my name. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so I always introduce myself as Corinne, full name. Yeah, and then I DJ under Bleu Pâle, which is more confusing.
There's a connection there. There's the blue connection.
Yeah.
Speaking of your parents, so let's just talk about like you growing up. Tell me about you growing up.
Yeah, so I grew up in Sherbrooke, so outside of Montreal, about an hour and a half east. We had a forest behind my house. That was like my favorite thing. We explored that a lot. We had like 2 TV channels, so we were like very creative people. Yeah, my parents were basically like, here's a stick, have fun, use your imagination. So we did a lot of that, just like playing in the woods, finding like all sorts of random stuff. Like I think there used to be like cows buried there or something because we would come back with like cow skulls and our parents would be like, what the fuck? Just freaking out. Yeah, so I have like really fond memories of just like being in nature mostly and like making up games and using my imagination.
And that's sort of like you're saying the creativity kind of sparks from that, just
For
having
sure.
to be creative.
Yeah, I think my parents were very big on like allowing us to be bored, and I think that's really important for kids, honestly, because then they're using their imagination and like we weren't allowed toys with batteries, things like that. Like it was very much like use your creativity and like make stuff up. So me and my sister actually both have a very like developed imagination even as adults from, I think it stems from that.
That's great though.
Yeah.
And what do you think the first like artistic outlet for that creativity was? Like what's the first, because you do a bunch of different
Yeah.
art. We're going to get into all of it.
For sure.
But what do you think the first thing that really like touched your creativity was?
Definitely performance, which is funny because like I didn't end up doing that as a job, but performance when I was a kid, I guess,
the
yeah,
DJing
with
stuff.
DJing,
Yeah,
exactly.
You're performing.
But yeah, performance. I was a dancer and I did competitive figure skating for like 12 years, I think. So yeah, very much into that. That was really great. I mean, it was my whole life growing up. Like my stepdad is actually like was my coach, and I mean he's still my stepdad, and so he was my coach, and yeah, like big figure skater. Summertime was all like skating camps and just like my whole summer. Yeah, it was just skating and choreography and costumes and things like that. So I like made all my own costumes with my mom. Yeah, so there's a big creative aspect to it also. Yeah, so I did that as a kid, and then I would always like I broke my foot one summer skating and I couldn't skate, and then I was just like eating all this candy and I had all these wrappers and I just decided to start making bags out of the wrappers and stuff. And I don't know if it was like I don't know, a strategy to get my mom to buy me more candy because she was like so into it, so she would buy me more candy so I'd have more wrappers.
So it was like secretly a way to get extra
Maybe,
candy.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was smart.
Yeah, and I just always like made stuff. It didn't really matter what it was. I just had an impulse to like create things.
Why'd you stop not figure skating? The performance skating. Yeah.
I think once I hit puberty, I got really awkward in my body and I felt very self-conscious, and I like just kind of rage quit figure skating, and I kind of turned to music and art. So I would just draw in my room a lot, and I was dealing with some mental health stuff, and so drawing in my room like more alone and secluded, felt safer in that moment. And that's where I really like developed a lot of my drawing skills and things like that. I had actually a huge book of like gig posters, and that was my favorite thing. I like found it at Chapters randomly, like on sale in the corner, and I was like, holy shit, can I swear on this?
Yeah,
Okay.
You're good. You
I was
just
like,
talk how you
holy
want to talk,
shit.
yeah.
Like finally like some illustrations that like speak to me. Like I'm really into like psychedelic illustrations, and like my dad's a big music collector as well, so like I remember just looking through his CD collections and like vinyls and stuff like that, and like seeing the covers and being like really inspired by like, it's crazy, yeah. And like this style of illustration is like, I hadn't seen that anywhere else. Like I find it's more pushed, it's like kind of weird, and I mean it can be, it depends on the cover, but like I find like psychedelic illustration kind of like really is like adjacent to music in a sense. Yeah, so I had a big book of gig posters, and I would just have it open on my bed, and I would just like try to draw like that. And yeah, and then eventually I moved on to my walls, and my mom just let me do it, you know.
Amazing. So your room as you were a little kid was like covered in your art.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And like I'm very privileged to have had parents that were like, cool, go for it. Like it's your room, do whatever you want, kind of thing. So it was like, yeah, my kind of safe zone of expression.
Well, yeah, it sounds like they were very supportive of all that, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously didn't. I'm feeling anyway, there was no real pressure on you once you decided like, hey, I don't want to figure skate anymore, like I don't want to do performance stuff.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, like, you know,
Yeah,
you have something else that you're into, that's fine. Like
I actually think they were even relieved because figure skating is a very expensive sport. And yeah, they were kind of like, cool, we don't have to pay for that anymore.
Well, I was going to ask, just sort of like to close the loop on that, but what was your favorite, because you said you designed your costumes, like what was the favorite costume? Like do you have one that stands out in your memory, like when you designed it?
Yeah, there's one, it was like, so when there's different like performances, I guess, that you would do. Like I did competitive stuff, so I would like compete, and we would travel kind of like all through. So I grew up in Sherbrooke, but then I moved to Sarnia, Ontario, which is like southern Ontario. And that's where I was doing most of my competing. So like most of southern Ontario, we just like drive around those spots like Kitchener, Waterloo, like all those little areas. And so you have like a solo that you perform for judges and all that good stuff. So I designed my own dress, and I like had picked out my own music, and I mixed my own music with my stepdad. Like I was like, I want this, and like, so he mixed it for me at the time. But I was very
But you're
involved.
curating the mix.
Yeah, like I was like very involved in the process, like way more than I guess like my peers were when it came to that stuff. Like they were skating, but I was like doing that and like also very
designing the
involved
routine.
Yeah, exactly. I was just really interested in the whole like visual part and like the curation part, I guess. So that's a more memorable costume, I guess, that I designed. It was like for my solo.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And then, just like you said, you transitioned into sort of more drawing art.
Yeah.
And I was gonna ask like, oh, what sort of era were the gig posters from? But I'm guessing from what you're saying, like 60s, probably 70s, like onwards.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a bunch of different ones, right? Because like there's the stuff from like my dad's CDs and vinyls and tapes also. He had tapes. And then there was the gig poster that was probably like 2009. So it was like very much like indie revival stuff, like Arcade Fire and like, like Wilco and like all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of posters.
So a little more modern, modern.
Yeah, but there's
but
still
inspired by.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure inspired by all that 70s, 60s stuff for sure.
And then do you think, so obviously, fast forwarding a little bit, you do some tattooing now, you do some other art also.
Yeah.
But do you feel, because I'd say your art, it definitely feels informed by that in a sense, but also like there's a lot more there. Like what do you feel are the inspirations sort of for your style and like where your art's going right now?
Well, right now, definitely like I'm really inspired by like traditional tattoo styles. So I'm trying to like kind of interpret those as in my own style. But I remember a distinct moment when I was in college when I was like trying to find my style, because that's always an artist's like biggest thing. I remember just like being really into like line work, just like a lot of lines, and very busy kind of stuff, and trying to change my style and be like, oh no, I want to draw like these people on Instagram or whatever, or like the people I'm seeing online. And I had a moment where I was like, why am I trying to draw like someone else when I draw like this, you know? Like, this is what's coming naturally, this is what feels good and that's comfortable for me. So why am I forcing something else when this is like what I enjoy doing? So then from there, I just kind of continued drawing in that way. And I was like, this is my style. And it kind of became my style. And I am told like that my stuff is recognizable. Like it's like if you see it in the city, you know it's me that did it. So I'm happy I kind of just went with that and started developing what felt good instead of like what other people were doing.
I feel like there's sort of like a theme of, not a theme necessarily, but like an aesthetic maybe of water in a lot of your work.
Yeah.
And then also with the name stuff too. Like I feel like the bleu, right?
Yeah,
the blue, the water. Like what's the water connection? Tell me about that.
I mean, I do love water. Like I love swimming. I feel very at home in water and around water. So I think that's just natural, honestly. I don't, again, like not resisting what comes naturally was like the flowy lines. Like I just love moving my pencil that way. And so I just allowed myself to move my pencil that way. And then, yeah, it became like pretty flowy.
They like,
and
they went into each other.
Yeah,
they fed into each other.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know about the DJ name. I didn't make that connection, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and also, because, you know, well, I mean, I don't know, because I've seen you perform a lot at Pull Up, and obviously Pull Up has a specific vibe, so I don't know if that's necessarily your 100% aesthetic for the music you like to play.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because I was really into hip hop like before discovering Pull Up. Like I do a lot of street art too, so a lot of my stuff is like very hip hop adjacent. When I learned to DJ, I was like, I'm gonna DJ hip hop and things like that. But then I started going to Pull Up and being like, oh my God, this feels like hip hop, kind of. Like there's hip hop like influences to it, but it's like more like the rave version, basically. And then I remember being like,
UKG.
oh, yeah, exactly. And just being like, I didn't know that was like a whole style, like, because a lot of my friends are house DJs or techno DJs. And I didn't know that UKG was like a whole thing, you know, like a whole umbrella. And so I remember hearing Simon play and being like, what is this? And he was like, breaks. And I was like, breaks, tell me more. And then I just like went into breaks and I was like, this is it. Like, that's what I want to be playing with in terms of sound. Because like I listened to a lot of house mixes and things like that. And I thought I was going to become that DJ, to be honest, because especially when I was like, when I'm drawing, I'm constantly just listening to like house mixes, things that are a bit more on the chill side. But then when it comes to like playing with sound, you're like what do I want to play with, right? Because like you're manipulating it and stuff, so it's more than just like dancing to it. And yeah, I would just like, again, like I'm like, why resist it when this is what's coming, like what I'm drawn to naturally. So I just like was like, I'm going for it, and yeah, ended up there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna backtrack slightly just to the fluidity of your art.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of cute little like aquatic creatures.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
What's your favorite? Like, what's your favorite like little water creature?
I'm a big frog person.
Okay, I was gonna say I feel
frogs.
like the frogs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love frogs. I don't draw them as often as I should for someone who loves frogs that much, but like as a kid, that was my biggest thing, was just catching frogs. You know, trying to like grab tadpoles and like grow them into frogs. Basically,
Did you ever do that?
I did, yeah,
okay,
successfully
crazy.
A few times, but then I've killed more than I've
There's a lot of
saved.
tadpoles. There's a lot of tadpoles.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just fascinated by the fact that they can like grow legs and stuff and just like become a whole other creature. Yeah, and that, again, just naturally drawn to that. I also love salamanders. Yeah, just little creatures that
kind of a similar in reverse, but the salamander like losing its tail or whatever versus the frog gaining its legs. It's like the body changing sort of, like the body morphing.
Yeah, it just fascinates me for sure. Like I'm like, how do you do that? Like.
Yeah, lizards are really interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
When did you first like? What was your first interaction, I guess, with street art, and when did you first because it's sort of there's a step, right? There's a whole step there between being interested in street art
Yeah.
and doing it.
Yeah.
So what was your initial, I guess, exposure, interest, and then how did you decide to take that step?
Well, my first exposure was Detroit. So I grew up in like mostly Sarnia. So Sherbrooke for like 7 years of my life, and then the rest of the time in Sarnia until I was 18. So we're like right across the river from Detroit, basically. So we'd go there quite a bit. And I just remember seeing all the graffiti and just being like, this is sick. Like, again, like I have no one in my family that does that. Like, I'm not from the streets whatsoever, but I was just really drawn to the art form and the fact that you can decorate like a decaying building. Like, I just love the contrast of that. And also like all the city plants that were growing like within the building and with the graffiti. I was just like, I just love the look of that.
The contrast.
Yeah, exactly. And just like nature taking over and like humans kind of like, again, like taking over in their own way, and beautifying a space really. And then from there, I was like in high school doing art and stuff. I've dabbled in graffiti a few times. And then when I moved
we won't say anything.
Yeah,
yeah.
We won't get into that.
We won't get you in trouble.
And then, yeah, when I moved to Ottawa in college, there was just more, it was more urban than Sarnia. So there was just more of that. Like I remember seeing it around. And
House of Paint, I'm sure.
Yeah, House of Paint, exactly, House of Paint. So my friend was like, oh, have you heard of House of Paint? And I was like, no, what is that? And so I got in with them and was doing like the temp walls with them. I actually did a lot of like projects with House of Paint, big fan.
That's awesome. Shout out House of Paint.
Yeah. So they really like got me into like the culture of it. But I also interned for the Mural Festival in Montreal. So I studied graphic design, so I interned for graphic design, but then was like fully immersed in that world. And I was like, I need to not be a graphic designer. That's when I realized like, fuck this, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna go and work on my art, and that's what I did.
That's awesome though.
Yeah.
And it's a good base, right? Even if you're not gonna
Yeah.
do it, it's a good skill set to have.
Oh yeah, I can make my own website, I can do all my own advertising. Like it really, I'm happy I finished it, and like a lot of people are teaching themselves graphic design right now. So yeah, I'm glad I did it.
It's a good time to know it, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, definitely.
How was the interning in Montreal also?
That was awesome, intense. I learned a lot. I was really young. I was like 20, so I like slept on my uncle's couch. Shout out my uncle.
That's
thank
the way
you.
to do it. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. And just like lived there for the whole summer, and I literally just reached out to them on Instagram because I was following them, because at the time I was like, yeah, into graffiti, stuff like that. Then I was like, I'm gonna look up, murals, like, who's painting those murals, because my uncle lives in Montreal, so I'd be there a lot. And obviously Montreal is like full of murals and like big artworks and stuff, and it's awesome. And I was just like following them on Instagram. It was like their second year or something doing the festival, and they're like, oh, we're planning for the season, and I just like in an Instagram comment was like, yo, you need an intern? And they're like, yeah, come on down. I was like, cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Again, the flow, right? Like,
yeah, just
not fighting it. It's like, oh, okay, here I go.
yeah, exactly. And at that time you could take the Greyhound, so it was super easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. R.I.P. Greyhound.
I know.
So, how did you start DJing?
DJing came later. Well, I'm really good friends with Jordan. Shout out Jordan, J Fun. We actually ran an art collective together called Music Art People. I have since stepped back from that collective just because I'm doing too much, but still a big fan of them. And so I was around DJs a lot, and I was live painting beside them. So I was doing a lot of performance, again, like in a different way, but painting performance. And when I turned 29, which was like a couple years ago, I was like, I'm almost 30. I want to do the shit that I'm scared of doing, Like I was always curious about DJing because I'm such a music lover, and I did music in high school. You know, I played guitar and piano and sang and like wrote my own music and all that stuff. Like I was like, yeah. But then I was like, I don't know if I want to like pick up a guitar again. You know, like I wasn't very passionate about that. And Jordan was offering lessons for women. So he was like, "Co, it's your time. Come on." Like just
He's amazing, eh?
yeah, he reached out to me. He was like, "Come learn. Like you've been curious about this for a while." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And I got like 5 lessons with him, and the rest is history. I was hooked after that. I was like, I've been looking for this because it's such a fun way to play with sound and without the pressure of like having to like make your own music or like make your own song or something. Mind you, now I want to learn how to produce, obviously, 'cause the pipeline is real.
I was going to ask you because you said you made your own music when you're in high school.
Yeah.
So I exactly like you're saying, I think there's obviously a pathway there.
For sure,
and how did that, like, again, obviously you're just very creative and you're going into everything that you're like, oh, I might be interested in this. But how did that come about? I'm guessing you learned the instruments first.
Yeah.
And then at some point it was like, why don't I write a song?
Yeah, I mean, the music thing, again, like, was always, like, so part of me. Like, even with figure skating, like, I would make
I was going to ask, this is during figure skating time still?
Yeah,
even?
I mean, I would make the mix CDs for us to practice to, you know. Like, I would make the playlists and, like, have all the jams and all this stuff.
Yeah, all
and,
the
like,
bops.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I was actually DJing, like, or making
without knowing it.
exactly.
Yeah,
I was a playlist person.
Yeah,
and, like,
you're a press play DJ.
Always. Yeah, always.
Back
and,
then.
Yeah, exactly, back then. And then I'm like, well, I may as well, like, learn how to mix, right? But in high school, the music came about. I was really into, like, the indie scene at the time, like, the gig posters and all that, right? So I was like, well, I'm gonna, like, learn my own. And my school had a good music program at the time. So, like, a few of the teachers were really into, like, guitar and stuff like that. So, again, like, I was privileged to have that in high school, like, access to, like, really good guitars and things like that. So, second period was always, like, my quiet time. Yeah, like, I also went to a really small high school, so it's like there was like 2 people in the music class, and we just got to like go on YouTube and like Google songs that we like and just learn them. Yeah, so it was really chill. It was very just like I got to learn kind of on my own in my bedroom kind of thing. Performed a few times in high school, but then yeah, like I just got really shy of the performance part. But I think honestly it's just because I don't think guitar and like band stuff is really my thing. I think electronic music is.
I was gonna say, I feel like there's obviously always been this through line of performance, and even though you've sort of been like more or less in love with it, I'll say.
Yeah.
I feel like it's more you've almost been looking for the right way to express that, right?
Exactly.
Like.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I tried a bunch of different performances. The live painting was a big one. Like,
yeah, that exactly same thing, right?
Yeah, and I love that one because I'm like I can have my back turned to the audience.
Yeah.
I can be in my zone. But yeah, the DJing is really nice because I get to it's like I get to share music I love, which I've always liked doing. I get to kind of play with it and like turn it into.
I can tell you
different.
love playing the sound. Like you love playing with the sounds.
I
you
do.
love like manipulating like
absolutely.
the sound and manipulating the BPM. Like
Yeah.
you just have mentioned multiple times. I'm like I can tell, and even like the mixing part, right? Like that's the big part, and it's like, and it's good that you love that part of it, right? Because that is. It's like there's a lot of different parts of DJing, but ultimately I think like that's really the. How you set a standard of like who's really good is like oh that was a great and not even like because sometimes you can it gets messed up sometimes, right? It happens like no one's perfect, but just knowing like guys like Simon, right? Guys like Simon, like honestly all those guys I feel are great mixers, great DJs.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But I think that's really the big thing, and so I think it's great that you really love that part of it, obviously, like you really love like playing with the sound. I just like how you describe that, like I can see it almost like
it's exciting, and I do a lot of it in my basement. Like half the time I'm not really like performing it, I'm just like playing around with it. It's a great balance to my art because a lot of my visual art I'm like sitting and like very like at a desk,
sedentary.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like DJing, I can stand and dance and kind of like reconnect to like my body and my physical self. So it's a great way to do that.
So is tattooing sort of your main it's like when you're an artist, right? It's like you gotta find some way to make money.
Yeah,
like, until
right?
like you can just get people to give you money. So would you say that's your main sort of? Not that you don't love tattooing. I feel like you really do love tattooing, and I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But was that sort of your way of finding a good way of like, creativity can pay the bills for me?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I won't lie, it's I mean, like, of course I'm starting out, so it's like not the most profitable business at the moment, but I did notice that I was getting a lot of tattoo requests. So a lot of people wanted me to draw them illustrations to then get tattooed. And I would say no, because ethically that's a personal thing, but like I'm kind of like, just go to your tattoo artist, like that's what they're there for, and they're passionate about the art, and like you should get them to draw it, kind of thing. And I've always done that with my artists, you know, like I've been getting tattooed for years, and I love the collaboration of that. So I would tell people, like, you know, like use it as a collaboration opportunity and stuff, and like go do that instead. But then I was like getting so many requests for that, and then I was like, my style is pretty tattooable, you know. And then I was like, I really like getting tattooed, I like the space, so I may as well, you know, go into that. Like it was, again, like I was 29. A lot has changed when I turned 30, because it's a milestone, right? You're like, what do I want to do that I've been scared to do? And that was another thing. I was like, tattooing would be sick.
But you know, you have a great mentality, because I think honestly, first of all, I think you're right. Obviously, you're completely right. But also, a lot of people don't think like that. Like really, a lot of people don't. Like, no, I'm just saying truly. Like I've been very privileged to know like lots of different types of people, and there's not anything wrong with it either. Like I'm not trying to say it as a negative, but just it's a fact that not everybody would think about it that way, and I think that's very admirable. Honestly, I think it's a very good way to think about life. Because you said that a couple times specifically, where it's like leaning into the things that you're scared of, like where there's like discomfort almost, and that's the place of greatest growth, right? And I think that's like, it's very smart, and it's very wise, right? Like a lot of people take a long time to figure that out, and I think that you're super fortunate. Obviously you knew it before you were 30, but you're very fortunate to have known it by 30 or earlier, you know, whenever earlier. When do you think you figured that out?
I think I had a moment when I was like 22 or 23. That was after the mural festival stuff. I was working at an ad agency in graphic design, and I was like, I hate this, you know. I was just like, I don't want to be at a laptop all day. I don't love that feeling. It felt not like I could be a little bit creative and like kind of use that, but I was like, it's just not where I want to like be putting my energy.
And again, for many people, a great job.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, a great job. Like, not
sure.
anything negative about that, but just for you.
Exactly. Yeah, like I know a lot of people in that field, and they're amazing, and like I have so much respect for design in general. But for me, I was like, I want to be doing the weird art on the wall, you know, like I want to draw weird shit, basically. And I was like, this isn't for me. And then I basically saved up for like 3 months of income. So it took me like a year or something to do that, got a line of credit, and then quit my job. And I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. I have 3 months, you know, to like figure something out. And I think I got a contract doing a mural like in a school or something. I was doing like more like how do you say that? Facilitation? So like art facilitation and stuff, like with students.
They bring you the idea basically like, this is what we want, and you're like, okay, I'll help you make that.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll bring the supplies and I'll make like art with people. And at the time, that was how I would make income, basically, because a lot of schools,
really cool.
Yeah, a lot of schools are willing to pay for that kind of stuff and have artists like come and talk. And but then again, I realized like I don't want to be an educator. Not that that's a bad thing. My mom's a teacher, love teachers. But it just wasn't for me. But I kind of like naturally kind of was like, I need income, and that's what is paying the bills. Followed that for a bit, and then I don't know. I was like pretty young, I guess, to realize that, but then it was like, I'll just figure it out as I go. And of course there was moments of like, what the fuck am I doing, and being really poor, and and like kind of glamorizing self-employment in a sense as well, of like, I'll have so much time to work on my art if I don't have this job. but then you realize that you're not doing it 24/7.
You're working more, if anything. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like so different. So like now I've been doing it for 6 years, almost 7 years. So
Congratulations.
It's like, thank you. Yeah. So now I'm like used to kind of the fluctuations and the pivoting and which is why I've tried so many things, right? Because I'm just like, oh, how do I make money here? How do I make money there? And like sometimes I realize I don't want to monetize this specific thing, so I like pivot back to something else.
That's also great knowledge, right? To know like what you love, but also where the line is of like something you love can become something you like don't hate, but like you fall out of love with because it's like, oh, I have to do this to make money now. And it's like it's less nice.
It's a different kind of pressure.
Yeah. Money
Yeah.
is just like it's it's nice to have, but it's also like it ruins a lot of things.
But
so
that's the thing. It's just like a different kind of pressure that I'm now used to, but at the time, it just takes a lot of trial and error, basically. Yeah.
When did you first? Because I'm assuming, my guess, you tattooed yourself probably before you tattooed anybody else. Usually that's the way it goes. But when did you first tattoo somebody else? And then how did you get hooked up with the studio you're at now?
Okay, so when did I first tattooed someone else in January of, I guess, this year. So
2024?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was the first time that I tattooed someone else. I tattooed myself, I think, in October of last year. So it's almost going on a year.
Yeah, you're just about to hit a year.
Yeah. And I got hooked up with the studio and my mentor, Byron, shout out Byron, because I got tattooed by them. So they actually tattooed my whole butt, which is really funny. Like, it's a funny story to say.
After they tattooed your butt, they're like, you want to work here?
We're like, now we're friends.
Yeah.
So.
We can't really get much closer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we had multiple sessions. So we had like about 6 sessions together. So we just got to know each other and we really got along. And it was in my time of questioning that I was like, well, I'm going to sign up for like a giant tattoo, obviously, because
why not? That's the thing you do. Exactly.
So yeah, I was like really questioning kind of like what I wanted to do with my career and was getting a bit burnt out on painting murals and doing street art again, like having money tied to that. I was like, I don't know, I just
finding less joy in it.
Yeah, like I just like giving art to the streets. Like it feels weird to have to monetize it all the time. So, and then I was like, I have some teaching gigs, but then I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher. And I've always been fascinated with tattooing and stuff. So I was just telling Byron all of that. And then I took myself on a little like solo trip to Montreal in, I don't remember what year it was. Must have been like 2022 or something. I was like, I needed like a creative retreat to myself, and like all I could afford was Montreal. So I took myself there for like a week by myself to just like figure my shit out, I guess. Like explore the city, journal, and just like try to, I don't know, I was feeling like in a rut, creative rut for sure. So I was just looking for a change of environment and inspiration. And then I was like, damn, I just really want to be a tattoo artist, you know? And then I reached out to Byron like a few months later, and they were like, I actually just took on an apprentice, so I can't take you, but I would take you in a heartbeat if not. And then I think like a year later, they're like, I can take you now. And I was like, okay, let's go. So I kind of waited around, to be honest, because I was like, I don't really want to just like go into any shop and learn from anybody. Like I really look up to Byron as an artist and was like, I really want to learn from you specifically. So I was like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Like I'll wait around a year. Like I still have stuff going on. So
I think that's very smart also. Like just again, from my understanding, it's like there's good shops and there's bad shops, you know, and it's like it can really hurt you to go to the wrong shop. So to know someone, and again, like you're saying, you really respect this person.
Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference, honestly.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, like, luckily I think there's a reason I got into this in my 30s, because I had more maturity about, like, what I wanted from this craft, you know? Like, I just know more about myself. I know more about my art. So I'm kind of, like, not sad that I waited that long, you know? I'm kind of like...
It was the right time.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the right time. Well, and I liked how you said that you because obviously it's about having the experience and knowing like what you don't like, but how you put it, where it's what you want out of the craft.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's super important. Like, well, not even super important. You know, you can go into something and not really have an idea, but I think it's super helpful to have that understanding. And so, you know, everything that you're doing is very with intent, right? Like, you know why you're doing it, and it's the same reason you said for why you waited, right? Because that was the right thing.
Exactly.
So I think that's great. And I mean, I saw your post the other day, because I can see obviously you have a bunch of tattoos, but like you're basically going for like a full tattoo body at some point. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Which is sick. That's awesome. So, what would you, because you have a lot of different like avenues, I feel like, for the creativity, and obviously that's good. You can diversify multiple different things, but like outlets and also income.
Yeah.
Ideally, what's the thing that you'd really like to, or is that, are you not even sure about that yet? So like what's the thing, like if you were to focus on one thing, if someone were to say like, I'm gonna give you a bunch of money, but you have to just do this thing because I need you to focus on that, like what's the thing you'd want to do?
Definitely tattooing. Like, I love my day-to-day doing that. Like, I just love spending one-on-one time with people. I love the craft. Like, I love, you know, I'm not grossed out by it. Like, I love, honestly, like, I even enjoy, like, all the weird, like, goo that comes with it. It's a very sensory-driven experience. That would be it. And I think, like, some of my challenges, like, in my life in general is like narrowing it down, you know, like, because I do like to do a lot of things. I love it, but like that has a shadow side, which is like burnout, right? Like, I can spread myself thin really easily. And I think I'm learning that right now, like going into my 30s, just like being more specific about things. So like right now I spend my time tattooing and DJing, and I think they're like a perfect balance, and that's kind of how I want to keep it, to be honest. Yeah.
That's great. Where do you want your style to go? Because obviously it's always evolving.
Yeah.
And we can talk about both. We can talk about the music and the art, but like, and because you're learning too, right? Like as you do it, and the tattooing partly because that's such a different, like the medium of skin versus right.
Yeah.
But then also just the art in general, like as you do it more, right? You start to love things more, like things less. Like, where would you like it to go?
Well, I would love to do like full body suits, like working with the body. Like you said, like my lines are very flowy and stuff. So I would love to just like, I'm working on freehand right now. So I'm like not using stencils. I'm just drawing directly on the skin. So that's kind of where I want to take it, is like kind of more of a custom, almost like meditative practice. Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Like there's an idea, like sort of like there's a plan there, but as you're going, it's like the live take of it, right?
Yeah, like I like, again, maybe it ties in like the performance and
I was gonna say
art.
the live painting. Exactly,
yeah, exactly. So like it doesn't make me nervous to do that, right? To like draw in front of people and to like develop a concept on the person directly. I'm like, it's part of the process. Obviously, you explain that to the client first, and you have to find people that trust and enjoy that. But that's what I enjoy about like working with my artists when they tattoo me, is like I kind of give them a lot of freedom to do what they want. And yeah, and that's kind of what I want to do eventually as well, once my skills kind of bring me there, is to just work more organically with the body as a medium. Yeah, it's very different than just a flat surface, right? Like it's alive.
I think that's just a very cool place to take it too, right? Like there's a lot of, because there's so many different avenues you can take that art and the art of tattooing, and I think that's super unique. Like I don't know if I've ever really, because what I was going to ask you, because obviously there's still a downside, because it's all in your mentality of how you think about it, but there's a challenge for you, which is you got to do this in sessions. Are you going to try to do longer? Because obviously there's downsides to that, but then with sessions, my thinking would be, it's like each time it's a new batch of creativity almost, right? Like as you start, so of course you're like continuing the art, but it's like, oh, the feeling on this one is a little different than the feeling on this one, because these are, how do you, what's your mentality in terms of like, maybe you haven't thought about this, but like how would you approach that, and what do you think the benefit or downside of like the one you would choose would be? Or is there a third option that I'm not thinking about?
I think honestly, like, that has been the biggest challenge for me to start, is like you can't always finish in one sitting, you know, and you can't, sometimes the client has to stop. Like sometimes they
It's
last.
not just you either.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not just you have to consider like their pain and stuff. And so it's like at first, like, you know, you have clients that can only sit for 2 hours, and you just have to learn to let go. You know, some clients don't come back, like, you know.
Wow,
And
really?
that hasn't happened to me too often, thank God. But like, you know, sometimes they can't handle it, or they didn't enjoy the experience, and it's nothing personal, but like it's their body, right? So like they don't have the financial means to finish the piece. So like it's like every session is its own thing, and you kind of have to just accept that that's the way it is. And if they come back and you get to keep going, then it's a new day and it's a new session. And
I kind of think it would be really, like, in my mind, I'm almost thinking of it like a tapestry, or no, not even tapestry. One of those, I'm thinking of this. I think this is from The Simpsons, but they have that quilt where it's like each generation puts like a different piece of the quilt on, and obviously the generation, it's more like weeks, months, whatever. But I love that idea almost, that it would maybe be like a quilt. Like, again, it's the same thing continuing, but it's like there's slight differences, right? Just of like even the temperature of the day, the humidity, whatever. There's all those little things that you can't control. Like even if your art was perfectly synchronous like throughout. And I think I don't know. I think it's a really cool idea. Honestly.
Yeah, you have to just accept that it's alive and that it's gonna like evolve with the body and with the person, you know. And like same with my own body, you know. Like I'm constantly adding to it, and I'm constantly, like, my style changes throughout the years, but like I have pieces that I probably wouldn't get now, but like they evolve with me and I enjoy them either way. So it's, yeah, the art of tattooing is very like long form, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, it does. It's like the journey of it.
Yeah, and I think like right now, like the industry is changing a lot, where, you know, I don't know if you've heard of like people in LA will like get put to sleep and get like a full bodysuit in one sitting.
Yeah, I have heard of it.
And I'm like, that is so intense for no reason. Like, first of all, it's really intense on the body, and it costs them like so much money. And also I'm like, well, you're kind of taking away the whole like patience aspect of it. And like the craft of tattooing is about like aging and like patience, you know, like a lot of it is patience. And so I think it's just like reflects our society too, right? We're impatient and we want things now. And
well, and it's a little bit also like, I don't know if attention seeking is the right word, but you know, like to do that, it is like, oh, that's headline, like that's attention like that's grabbing, hardcore, you know? Right? Yeah, it's exactly.
But yeah, so I wouldn't do that.
fair. No, I think that's good. Good. Well, I think just to wrap it up, because I mean, honestly, there's been a lot there. Yeah. I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to ask you, so what's a piece of art that you've done, anything, music, art, performance, that you still think about, that you're very proud of, that you're like, I'm really happy that I put this into the world? And then what's something that you'd like to tell the world? Like, because I feel like you tell the world a lot through your art, right? But to directly say to people watching, to the world, like, you know, what's your thought?
I think I want to, like, I think the biggest thing with my art, like the conversation that I try to open, is more or less like anybody can do this. Like, I know this sounds weird, but like it's mostly in the sense that you should create because it makes you feel good. And like I've always used creativity as that. Like it's kind of like my self-soothing practice. Like luckily I didn't turn to hard drugs. I turned to drawing. But it's like, yeah, it's always been kind of a safe space for me. And I've always created without, like, even if I do it for money now, I would still be doing it if I didn't get paid. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of become like this friend of mine that I use for soothing and that I enjoy doing. So yeah, I guess like I want to remind people that like you can make stuff even if you're not selling it, even if you have like your full-time job. You should make stuff, you know? And even if it's out of trash, or like I make so much stuff that I never show anybody, like just out of impulse, because like I don't know, one time I made like 50 pom-poms for no reason, because I was like, I wonder how you make a pom-pom, and then I just like YouTubed it, And then I got obsessed, and I had a day of just like watching movies and making pom-poms, but like I'm never gonna use that for anything really. Other
You
than
never
like,
know.
I mean, maybe one
You
day I'll
never
do like a
know.
big pom-pom thing, but who knows?
Good experience. I mean, I just was struck, like, YouTube is so amazing.
Yeah,
You just
I
being
know.
able to be like, oh, how do I make pom-poms? I'll look
Yeah,
that up, and there's a video
exactly.
explaining you how to do it. Like,
Yeah, and I just want people to have more fun when they make stuff, right? And to not be worried about like who's gonna see it, and am I gonna be popular because of this? And I think the reason things have worked out for me is because it's very natural, because I genuinely enjoy doing it, and like that could be a hard pill to swallow sometimes. Like you kind of have, and I've had to look at myself too and be like, am I doing this, to be popular? Am I doing this like because I want people to like me? And I always go back to like, I'm doing this for me ultimately, and then the rest is like whatever. If people respond to it, cool. If they don't, then I had fun. So yeah, that's the biggest message.
Yeah. And what's the thing that you're like most proud of that you created so far?
I'm gonna say one for DJing and then one for art. So the DJ, I'm really proud of this specific set that I did for Pull Up actually. I think, if I remember correctly, it was like in December. I played a set, it was like not an opening set, it was kind of like in the middle, and I'm really proud of like the sweet spot of like flow state and breaks that I got. I don't know, it was kind of like I put together a set that was like more of an atmospheric kind of vibe, but also kind of heavy and breaky. And that's kind of where I was like, okay, I think I found like the sound that I want to play with. And I was really proud of that one. And then for visual art, I recently did a mural at Arlington 5, which is like a coffee shop for people who don't know it. I love that community. My partner works there. It's like, I'm always there.
That's a good spot.
Yeah, I'm always there drawing like in the morning before I go to tattoo people. And I did a mural there in like their little courtyard area.
In the back, yeah.
Yeah, in the back. And I did their chalk wall inside as well. So anything I do at Arlington 5, I'm always proud of because it's like the community that I want to be giving art to. So
that's amazing. The chalk wall, I haven't seen the mural in the back, but the chalk wall was really good.
Yeah,
when I saw it last time. It was very good.
Yeah, the mural is new. I did that one in June, so.
Okay, I gotta go back. I gotta go back. Co, thanks for talking to me. This is great.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate
thanks for
it.
coming to my backyard.
Absolutely, yeah, it's beautiful. It was like we had to wait. We delayed a couple times for the weather to be right, but I think it was worth it.
It's perfect. The light is beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome.